Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Bingham, and I am the 9 times great-granddaughter of John and Sarah Wiles. And I am also the 9 times great-granddaughter of Francis and Mary Foster Peabody. So, I would like to speak today a little bit about the Peabody's granddaughter, Hepsibah Peabody, who actually married into the Wiles family. So Hepsibah Peabody was one of 12 children born to Isaac and Sarah Estes Peabody on the 21st of May in 1709. She lived at what is now 22 Boardman Lane in Topsfield, and it was an affluent farm back in those days, consisting of about 1,500 acres. The bulk of the Peabody acreage that they owned was in Topsfield, but some of it was in Boxford and some of it was in Ipswich Farms. Hepzibah's younger years would have been learning how to perform the appropriate chores by her mom, which prepared her to run her own household in later years. Hepsibah married Ephraim Wiles Jr. and lived in the house at the junction of Perkins Row and Meeting House Lane. And that was the same house where his own grandmother was arrested in 1692. Now, bringing us back to Hepsibah and Ephraim, their brother and brother-in-law, John Wiles, lived directly across the road on Meeting House Lane. Now, if you're interested, go ahead and Google Meeting House Lane, and you will notice that as you're traveling from Howlett Street, which is a very long street that winds from Main Street all the way back, and in the back of the Capon House, it goes all the way down and goes underneath Route 1. And once you get underneath Route 1, then you take that left on Meeting House Lane. Meeting House Lane is not even a 1/10 of a mile long. So once you turn left there, John Wiles, the grandson of John and Sarah Wiles, would have lived on the left-hand side, and then within steps across the road would have been where Ephraim and Hepsibah lived in the original house. So Hepsibah and Ephraim Jr. would have been probably considered to be affluent. And the reason I say this is because I saw a report in the History of Topsfield book that states in 1762, in that seating of the meeting house, that Ephraim sat behind the elders towards the front of the meeting house, and his wife, Hepsibah, actually sat directly across the aisle from him. So people that were seated towards the front of the meeting house were usually in the higher tax bracket, so they were more affluent. Now, the Peabodys bore 10 children, and sadly, Hepsibah outlived 5 of her children. So her oldest son, Thomas, died when he was 4 years old, and I don't know why. It doesn't state why. But their son, Jacob, died at Fort Edward, possibly killed in a French and Indian attack in 1756 or 1757. Then she had another son named Thomas, from whom I descend, and he died from an illness that was described as lethargy in 1781, shortly, or a few years, just a couple years before Hepsibah herself passed away. And then 2 of their infant twin sons, Elijah and Ephraim, died 3 days apart July 3rd and July 6th of 1743. Now, on a more joyous occasion, Hepsibah was possibly witnessed, but was definitely alive for the birth of her first 11 grandchildren. And she had many. So that was considered to be probably a big deal, because women back in those days, a lot of them weren't around to see the birth of their grandchildren, but she was. So Ephraim, her husband, died in 1767 from old age, and he was 74 years old. And Hepzibah died the 23rd of December in 1783, and she was also 74 years old. She died of consumption, and today that's possibly pulmonary tuberculosis. Now, as an aside, Ephraim and 3 of his brothers were part of the second expedition in 1724, before he married Hepzibah, against the French and Indians at Norwich, I can't say that properly, but Norwich, Maine, which resulted in the death of Father Sebastien Rale, I believe it is. And I'm going to provide a link in the description regarding the story for those of you who are interested in reading more about that. Now, tradition states that after this expedition, Ephraim and his brothers went and stayed for a while with their sister, Mary Perkins, who was living there with her husband, or actually in Arundel with her husband. I don't know his first name, but his last name obviously was Perkins. And 3 of his brothers were supposedly stayed there. But Ephraim obviously came back because he was married in 1730. So that's what happened there. Again, I will provide a link in the description for that story for those of you who are interested in what happened to Father Sebastien Rale. So thank you very much for listening to my story, and if you like this video, please click the thumbs up and comment in the comment section, because it adds to the algorithms and it further promotes the video. And also feel free to subscribe to my channel. And thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.